This is Mark Strassman, reporter with online broadcasting services PASS AB 2987 channel and California Politics Today. We're about to speak to Lloyd Levine, who's the California State Assembly person in the 40th Assembly District. Welcome to California Politics Today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
Tell us a little bit about the 40th District and who's in it and what its major economic institutions are.
Well, it's the heart of the West San Fernando Valley. It runs from Van Nuys on the east out to Woodland Hills, West Hills on the west. It's got Canoga Park, Reseda, Winnetka, North Hills, North Encino, North Tarzana. It's a very suburban district. It's got some diversity. Upper middle class, but there's some areas of poverty as well. Some of the major employers are the aerospace industry and the Anheuser-Busch facility.
How many terms have you served in the Assembly from the district?
I am in my second term and running for re-election currently.
Okay, and after that, that's it for you as an Assembly person, is it? After that next term, if you
yes, unfortunately, due to term limits, as much as I love this job, I won't be able to keep the job. So I am running for the State Senate.
In 2008?
2008, yes.
Okay. You're the chair of the Utilities and Commerce Committee. What's the function of that committee in the California legislature?
Certainly. The Utilities and Commerce Committee on the Assembly side oversees all energy policy, natural gas, telecommunications, cable, cell phones. That's the primary jurisdiction of the committee, and it's our job to set state policy in all of those areas, or in more common parlance, to make sure the lights stay on, to make sure you can heat your house, and to make sure you can talk to your neighbors. Okay. Now, you're the co-author with Speaker Nunez of AB 2987, the Digital Infrastructure and Cable Competition Act of 2006. What are the main provisions of this bill? What would it do? It would, I hate to use the word deregulate because oftentimes that's a loaded phrase, but it would really modernize our state laws as it pertains to video service. Our video service is provided in a number of limited ways. You either have rabbit ears, the old technology, you have a satellite dish, which is about 27% of the marketplace now, or you have cable. But new providers want to enter the marketplace, primarily AT&T and Verizon using their technologies. But the statutes were derived for a time with no competitors and are, as such, outdated and cumbersome, and we're trying to significantly modernize those to speed to entry, to provide a speed to entry for those companies to get their technologies to market, and primarily for two reasons. One, competition, so we can help drive down prices and spur innovation, and two, they want to make billions of dollars worth of private investment in infrastructure, and fiber optic infrastructure here in California. And once that infrastructure is in place, we all reap the benefits of it.
You mentioned Verizon and AT&T. Who besides those companies are supporting this bill?
Oh, there's numbers of organizations. The California Chamber of Commerce is supporting the bill. There's a number of community organizations supporting the bill. Those people who recognize the benefits of competition and recognize the benefits of deploying the fastest, highest speed fiber optic cables as quickly as possible.
Who's opposing it, and on what basis?
Well, right now there's a couple of groups opposed to it, primarily the California Cable Television Association and the cable operators, because they have an existing monopoly, and they don't want the competition, and frankly, who can blame them? If I had that circumstance, I'd kind of like to protect it as well. And local governments, because local governments are the franchising authority under current law, which have created the cable franchises, and they, under our proposed bill, would lose some of their authority. They wouldn't lose all of it, but they would, in order to streamline and bring these technologies to market better, they would lose some of their ability.
Talk about some of the authority that they lose and how they stand to gain, lose, or remain the same in terms of funding that would come to them from a new entrant into the video services market.
Certainly. There's a couple of problems. Right now, local governments have the ability to negotiate franchises with cable operators, and they recognize what's called a franchise fee, which goes into their general fund. In addition, they can receive fees for their public education and government channels. Unfortunately, satellite is not required to pay any of those fees. You've seen 27% of the people migrate to satellite. Cable fees have gone up, so in the short term, the local governments haven't lost their revenue, but in the long term, local governments are going to lose a significant amount of revenue. Our bill requires that the new entrants pay a 5% or up to 5% set by the local government franchise fee.
The local government will still be determining what that up to 5% fee will be? They can, well, presumably they'd all say 5%.
Not necessarily. There are some cities that may choose not to for cost purposes, to keep the costs down for the consumers.
Right.
5% is capped in federal law, so we just go up to the 5% that's there in federal law, and leave the flexibility up at the city level.
I didn't understand that 5% that comes, that up to 5% that can come to the city. You're saying, is that passed through to the consumer, or is it taken out of the gross revenues?
It's a 5% of the gross revenues.
So it comes out of the bottom line of the cable companies rather than the...
Exactly. It's a 5% of the gross revenue, not just from the cable company. I want to try and break the use of the term cable company. Video service provider. Right. Because cable refers to a technology. Right. But in the future, you're going to get the same video over a variety of methods.
So under AB 2987, the video service provider, their gross revenues for delivering the video services, not for their voice over IP, not for their internet service, just for the video. 5% of the revenues they get from that, up to, and I'm trying to see what incentive there would be for cities to have that fee be less than the federally capped limit of 5%.
Just politically, they may choose to,
as a way of encouraging the companies to deploy there sooner,
or as a way of not wanting to impose a fee that on a company that may end up getting passed on in another way to their consumers. So that that it costs less to get the money, get your cable service or your video service.
All right. Talk about the complaints of the phone companies that it takes too long to get a municipal cable franchise under existing law.
Certainly, within existing law, there are a few limitations, a few exceptions to this. Sacramento and Marin counties have a cable commission, but other than that, and the city of Los Angeles, which has 12 franchise areas. Other than that, you have basically a franchise per city, which in California means we have 478 cities, plus the unincorporated areas of county territory. So you're looking at close to, if not more than 500 separately negotiated franchises. And these can often take a long time to negotiate. Some cities are very good about facilitating a quick franchise agreement. Others will drag it out for a long period of time, and that means the new entrants, in order to get their fiber optic cable in, will have to go city by city, county area by county area, to 500 different entities to negotiate these franchises, which in some cases is really very cumbersome, and in other cases it allows for, I don't want to call it extortion, but it allows for negotiations for things that would seem absurd.
Well, let's talk about that. You mentioned the authority that cities have now to get PEG funding and to get the franchise fee, but they're also entitled to do what you called extortion, to get people to put flower pots up and down Main Street.
Other people have called it painting the mayor's house, washing the mayor's car.
They wouldn't have that right under AB 2987 to do that anymore, would they?
Correct. It would be and it's interesting. You talk to the cable companies have as much problem with the new entrants, particularly the existing incumbent cable providers have it now on the reauthorization. We're not going to reauthorize your franchise unless you do X, Y, or Z, and that cable company's stuck because they've already spent millions of dollars investing in that infrastructure in the local community, and now in order to be able to utilize it and charge consumers, they have to agree to whatever it might be. I know one example in one area recently was to provide several $1 million worth of high-speed fiber network to a small group of about 300 to 600 very wealthy homes, and the question is, okay, why should, as a condition of receiving their franchise, they be required to spend that much money to wire a small number of homes?
Okay, well, these onerous extortion demands from cities leads me to think that it would be good for the cable incumbents to be out of that requirement as well, and be able to get a state-issued authorization under 2987 as well. What's the timetable and the rules under which they would be able to take advantage of this new system?
Certainly, the new system would be available to them at such time as their existing contracts expire. We would not be seeking to void the existing contracts. The state coming in and voiding the contracts of legally negotiated contracts between local government and cable operators is not something we're seeking to do at this time.
I understand there was an amendment offered to this bill yesterday that would have allowed the incumbent video providers to abrogate their contracts with the cities. What was who proposed that? What would it have done exactly, and what was its fate?
Well, it was not accepted. They'll take them in reverse order. The amendment was not accepted. It's something that the cable industry, and only the cable industry, has been floating for quite some time. What it really means, what they're asking for, you use the term abrogation, they're now trying to call it opt-in. What it really means is those 500 some odd negotiated franchises, or really contracts, between a city, your city, and that company would be voided by the stroke of the governor's pen. And what we're saying is we at this time don't believe that's the right thing to do. When those franchises expire, then they will have access to the new model. But until such time, we're not wanting to void those contracts. Okay. It's a key public policy question. Should the state void a contract like that?
No, I want to focus in on Los Angeles, the situation here. And I spent some time yesterday researching this to the best degree I could. And it's my understanding right now that the following is true. The cable franchises for the city of Los Angeles, you mentioned the 14 areas, expired in August of 2002. The city requested and the cable providers agreed to a 2-year extension, taking those contracts to August of 2004, at which point the city asked and the cable companies acquiesced in a 1-year additional extension to August 2005. There hasn't been an additional offer and acceptance of a continuation since then. And the language that emerged in my discussions with the people who know about this is that the contracts have expired, but they're still in force, because federal law provides that unless a franchise agreement is either denied or renewed, it continues in force.
Exactly.
The preamble, but not the text of the bill, 2987, says that, as you just said, that incumbent video service providers can opt into the new system when their contracts expire. The Los Angeles contracts, and this is apart from the back and forth between and among Comcast, Etopia, and Time Warner to change this, and what the FCC has to do, and what the bankruptcy court has to do, but in terms of the city and the state, will whoever owns the separate or aggregated franchises in Los Angeles be eligible to opt in under AB 2987 in January 2007 if it's passed?
So long as there is no existing contract, yes.
And this would give an incentive.
Or existing franchise, I should say. So long as the current franchise has expired, then yes, they would.
Okay. Does this make it a little problematic? This is obviously the largest franchise area in the state, I think.
Not necessarily.
It's not Los Angeles?
It's the largest area, but because we have 14 franchises, there are other areas that have larger franchises.
Time Warner, after everything falls out, should have 98% of that of the Los Angeles city.
You are correct, and then it will be. But as it's currently constituted, that's not the case.
Have you noted? Is there any irony here? The Cable Television Association, the California Cable and Telecommunications Association, is the strongest opponent of this bill. But wouldn't their largest single current franchisee or to-be franchisee, Time Warner, benefit by the passage of the bill?
Yes, but there is more to it than that.
Okay,
there's the entire rest of the state. There's Fresno, there's Bakersfield, there's plenty of other cities, there's plenty of other areas out there. There's within the city of within the county of Los Angeles. There's multiple smaller cities. It would affect one company in one area, but it would also affect the other companies negatively in the other areas.
When do you have figures on when the franchises with existing providers expire statewide and in the places you mentioned, and generally how much longer they have to run on average?
It depends. It's like I said, there's 500 some odd franchises in California, and some of them have, as you've pointed out correctly with LA, are already expired. Others are expiring in the next year or two. Some go 15 years to the future.
I want to talk about that and two other timing issues. We're talking about when those expire, the existing contracts, and how long it would take the phone companies to negotiate separate deals. And there's the question of deployment and how long it will take. And what's your estimate of, let's assume the bill passes, it goes into effect January 2007. How long is it going to take Verizon and AT&T to deploy the technology that they would be able to deploy under the state-issued authorization that they'd get on this bill?
You know, that's a better question for them.
Well,
they've indicated. I mean, they've indicated that the build up and build out will start almost immediately. They're ready to invest. How long before how many customers get to see that, and in what areas? That's part of that is proprietary, so they're not sharing their business plan with us. Part of it depends upon access to the rights of way that local government grants them, the availability of the materials and the people they need to do it. But they are talking realistically a 3 to 5 year time frame right now.
3 to 5 years
before we'll see a significant size deployment.
Because the relation of these two different times, if it would take them years in general terms to negotiate separate agreements with the cities, but it's going to take them an indeterminate number of years to deploy their system, even if they get the go ahead and green light through 2987. What's the rush to give them the right to not negotiate with the cities when it may take them longer to deploy the systems technically than it would take them to negotiate the contracts with separate municipalities?
Because with our bill 2987, the companies would be able to, upon the signature and effect on January 1st, 2007, would be able to seek a statewide franchise. That's one of the hallmarks of the bill. It would be a statewide franchise that's more of a checkbox system. So long as you meet these criteria, you're issued a franchise. It's no longer a negotiated franchise. They would be able to apply for and very quickly receive that franchise and then begin to build. If they were stuck in the old model, they would have to go to a city, and Verizon has been successful in a few areas, but they've been at it for years now, and they've got 3 franchises. They've been turned down and strung out in negotiations in others. The companies would be subjected to going city by city and wouldn't be able to start building until such time as that franchise was negotiated. And that could be 1 month, 2 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. We don't know how long, but if you went to a city and it took 3 years to get the franchise, it would be at least 3 to 5 years after that franchise before that city started to see the benefits of the new technologies.
Why is that? Couldn't they start building out in the cities they've got franchises in now?
No.
And get new ones and start the new ones as they get the franchises?
Because you're missing one key point.
Okay.
They don't have franchises in cities now.
Right.
Verizon has negotiated some franchises. AT&T has none.
Right.
So Verizon has built in those where they've negotiated franchises.
Right.
But there are no franchises held by AT&T or Verizon that are unbuilt. So they would have to start negotiating franchises and couldn't build until such time as they got them.
So the critical step in the critical path there is to get the franchises, and
Correct.
You're saying that's going to take so long that it's necessary to do 2987.
Correct.
Okay.
Additionally, it makes more business sense because the old franchise model was a much smaller one, and you now have companies with giant footprints. As opposed to smaller, startup companies. When the cable companies first came, you used to have a lot of them, but due to the mergers, you now have basically 4 large cable companies.
And 2 large phone companies in California.
But you do have some others. There are a few others out there.
Right.
There's a phone company called Volcano up in the North State that's actually seeking to provide video service. There's a lot of independent, what are called CLECs, competitive local exchange carriers, not the incumbent local carriers like AT&T and Verizon. There are throughout the state a number of competitive locals who have pretty much deployed their fiber, and they're looking to compete. In Sacramento, the most successful what's termed overbuilder is Sure West, and they're already out there delivering a triple play, but they're more akin to an existing cable company than the existing phone companies.
Verizon and AT&T don't compete against each other in the residential markets.
No,
they have monopoly areas.
Correct.
They won't be competing in video service delivery or voice over IP or internet access under 2987 either, will they?
Not with each other, no. Under 2987, the competition, and you're already starting to see the incumbent cable providers, Comcast, Time Warner, Cox, Charter, offering phone service. So there will be competitors to AT&T and Verizon in the phone market from the landline-based cable companies. You're also seeing competition for AT&T and Verizon coming from the cell phone companies. Cell phones are becoming more and more of a direct competitor as their features improve to those landline-based companies.
But AT&T won't be going head-to-head with Verizon for video delivery service.
No, they'll be going head-to-head with whoever the incumbent cable and satellite. Remember, 27% of this marketplace is taken by satellite, so they'll be going head-to-head with, in most areas, at least two other competitors, satellite and cable.
Are you worried that a duopoly situation would exist between the telcos and the cable companies, and that they would, in some sense, collude to keep prices up anyway?
No. I'm not at all worried about that. There's a number of reasons why, features that are built into the bill, features that exist in current law that will prevent that. The factor of satellite being in the picture provides three competitors, other emerging technologies, video, cell phones that provide video, those sorts of things.
Another emerging technology is municipal wireless, about which we're not hearing much these days. Do you have a view on that? Is the legislature going to do anything to encourage it or discourage it? Verizon, of course, tried to shut it down in Philadelphia. It failed, more or less, but got it shut down the rest of the state, Pennsylvania.
Right.
What's the story on municipal wireless as an alternative to all these things we're talking about? From your point of view,
municipal wireless is a broadband solution, and ultimately in the future, it's my opinion that everything's going to be a broadband-based service. That your phone service will be broadband, your video service will be IP broadband-based, so you will be able to log on to a website. We're sitting here next to my computer. I'll be able to log on to to a website, go to ESPN. Currently, today, I can do this without video service from cable or a phone company, and I will be able to pull up video programming from ESPN or CNN. In the future, all of it will be broadband based. I would personally, I'm not taking any legislative action one way or another, and I haven't seen any other legislators in regards to local wireless networks. I would personally discourage it from the wireless standpoint, from the local government standpoint, because I don't think it would be a wise investment to spend millions of taxpayer dollars on these networks, knowing the pace of technology as it changes, knowing that you might buy a system today that's obsolete in a year or two and not be able to go and upgrade it. I just don't think it would be a smart thing for local government to do, given the pace of technology.
Okay, let's talk about the legislation. What amendments were added or made to the bill yesterday as it passed the Appropriations Committee in the Assembly?
There was quite a few amendments taken. Those that were most important were to shift the franchising authority from the Department of Corporations to the Department of Consumer Affairs. Almost everybody involved thought that was something that they were much more comfortable with. We significantly tightened the language on the continuation of the public education and government channels, or what are termed PEG channels, so that we assure that local governments are going to continue to receive those channels. We moved consumer protection, which was, we had originally, in the original legislation, moved consumer protection to the state level, enforcement of consumer protection laws to the state level. In consultation with local government, we've decided it's the better option to have the consumer protection enforcement take place solely at the local level, so that if you have a complaint about your video service, you're calling your local city councilman. You don't have to call a state bureaucracy. Those are the primary amendments that were taken yesterday. There was a few other technical amendments taken, but those are the significant ones. And we are continuing to work on amendments, almost on a daily basis.
Tell our listeners what redlining is, who's complaining about it, and what the phone companies have said to obviate those complaints.
Sure. Redlining, it's got a number of different terms. Redlining, discrimination, cream skimming, cherry picking. What it really is a company going in and drawing, in the traditional sense, drawing a red line around those neighborhoods that they don't want to serve or want to serve differently. In large part, it came from the banking industry or mortgage industry and insurance industries, where there was economically undesirable customers and they were redlined on a map. they're really afraid of is the consumer groups, the community groups, a lot of them, and cable, for economic reasons, is afraid that the new entrants, AT&T and Verizon in particular, will be able to use their network and their size to go in and offer service only to those high value or wealthy customers, and that the fear is that minority communities and poorer communities will be skipped over. What's happened is AT&T has assured us in their business plan that they don't want to do that. I'm skeptical, and so is Senator Escudia, and so who's the chair of my committee on the Senate side, and so is the Speaker. We want to see some significant language in there guaranteeing who's going to get what services when.
What form of would that language take in general terms?
We don't know yet. I've stressed three basic points. I want to know who is going to get the technology, what technologies are they going to get, and in what time frame are they going to get it. And it's got to be reasonable. You can't have one community receiving the best technology and another community receiving an inferior technology and then 10 years later get caught up to speed.
The bill as it now exists seems to say that the delivery of services through satellite, for example Dish Network from AT&T, would satisfy the anti-redlining requirements. People have complained about that, saying that broadband fiber optic or fiber optic with coax to the last 100 yards provides significantly better opportunities for internet access than satellite does, and that it's unfair to let a provider off the hook of redlining with that. What's your take on that? What's the bill say now? What's
I agree.
It going to say?
That is what it does say now. We're looking to change that. It's possible that as a video product, the satellite could suffice. But the Speaker and I are concerned with broadband deployment and the highest speed broadband deployment, and certainly the video DSL combination package, as AT&T has what they're calling home zone, I don't believe would suffice for a broadband connection. It might suffice for video.
Talk about what's really broadband. Apparently in South Korea and other countries, they have they have broader broadband, faster speeds. What do you see this bill helping to do in terms of bringing real broadband to everyone and at affordable prices and soon?
Sure. You're right. In Korea and some of the other countries in Asia, they've got 50 to 100 megabits per second. I think one country even has a gigabit per second. All that really means is the size of the pipe and how much you're able to get through, and the bigger the pipe, the faster it comes. It's like water pressure. You can only get so much water through a straw, but you can get a lot through a 1 foot diameter pipe. This bill will provide an incentive for companies to make significant investment in California. What speed we ultimately realize, I don't know. We're looking now at least 10 megabits per second, which is better than we have in most areas, but does pale in comparison to what they've got overseas. But the point is, we're getting private capital, private money to make a significant investment in our infrastructure starting almost immediately.
Do you think with the structure of new entrants and incumbents providing money for PEG channels, in particular public access, that it's time to move to a new model, both technically and administratively, from the existing public access system that has antiquated studios, bureaucratic arrangements, distribution of that content one time on obscure channels at obscure times of the day. When I'm doing this interview with a handheld camera, distributing it on the web, it's available all the time, everywhere. Do you think that this is a good opportunity to revamp that system?
I think we need to do both. As I said earlier, I recognize that in the future, not just PEG channels, but and we're starting to see that trend now. A lot of content is going to be available over the web, the internet. You can download episodes of the TV show Lost the next day for I think 99 cents. I can get an enhanced CNN product for $25 a year over the computer right now without a video package. I think in the future you will see other types like the PEG channels going over the computer, but in the meantime people are used to receiving it a certain way. I may want to watch some video on my computer for CNN, but most people want to watch it on their TV.
Well, TiVo and Bright Cove and others are developing systems that take it over the internet and put it on the TV.
Correct.
So that there's 1 million channels, and the issue becomes how much broadband have you got, and is there net neutrality, which I'd like you to address.
Right now,
in terms of this bill.
We want to keep the ability to have PEG channels coming over the cable systems or video systems the way they are, recognizing, and my goal is recognizing that in the future we're trying to craft a bill that will be a living entity and will transition as technology changes into the future.
Do you think that that government and law can keep up with the advances in technology, and how have you tried to factor that into this legislation?
I don't believe government and law can keep up with advances in technology, which is why we're trying to write a bill that doesn't need to do that, that doesn't need to be revamped, that addresses all entrants into a video marketplace, that recognizes broadband solutions, and that creates a playing field and a framework so that entrants, regardless of technology, are subject to the same set of rules. That's one of the ways I started with this, is recognizing that you have companies providing the same services and regulated and taxed differently. The goal in the future would be to create this model, this framework, so that whoever comes in, these are the rules you're playing by.
Are you satisfied that public discussion of this bill and the issues surrounding it has been adequate? Has it been well covered on television, on the internet? Has there been enough discussion of it to your taste?
Yes, there has been, more discussion of this. This is probably based on my colleagues, questioning of me, probably the single biggest issue in the legislature this year. There's been more interest in this from more people. I've seen countless numbers of TV commercials naming this bill specifically, either urging people to support it or oppose it. We get phone calls in support and opposition, as do many of my colleagues. There's tons and tons of information out there on this. Our hearing on this bill in my committee lasted some 3 hours plus. There is plenty of public input on this.
Okay, what's the schedule for the bill's consideration from here forward?
It was just passed out of Appropriations Committee yesterday. It will be heard on the floor sometime in the next week. It's got to be heard on the Assembly floor by June 2nd, and then go to the Senate. So
heard on the floor. You expect it's going to pass on the Senate next in the Assembly next week?
I expect it will pass the Assembly next week, and then it'll go to the Senate. We recognize that we still need to do some more work to craft a final finished product.
Summarize again the points that you see and others see that still need to be addressed.
Sure. There's still some technical issues that we need to work out with the PEG channels. We need to address the build-out redlining issue, how that non-discrimination, how all of that is going to be achieved. Those are two of the most significant portions in the bill, but there are a number of other provisions that we need to look at that are more technical and esoteric, but equally as important.
And where legislatively will those changes or adaptations be made?
We'll probably make some of them coming up on Monday or on Tuesday in some amendments on the floor in the Assembly, and the rest of them will have to take place in the Senate.
And who's going to oversee it in the Senate, and what's the timetable there?
The Speaker and I are very involved in this. Our staff, we've been meeting. We've had meetings every day for 2 weeks just about with all of the different groups who are interested in this, cable and the PEG channels and the counties and the cities and AT&T and Verizon. We've had internal staff meetings with none of the interest groups in the room. We've had many of those as well to try and shape this. I am taking a personally very, very active role in overseeing most of the negotiations on this, as is the Speaker. We had a meeting last week with Senator Scudia, myself, and the Speaker, in which we kind of told the phone companies where they need to be on the redlining language, because we didn't believe that where they were was appropriate.
What'd they say?
They heard us, and they're out right now trying to work on some language that meets our objectives.
Okay, we've got about 1 minute left. You're expecting then the bill in modified form will pass the Senate this session?
I believe that we will get a bill to the governor's desk this year, and he will sign it, that will provide an updated framework of legislation for video service provision in California, for the deployment of broadband, for competition amongst providers. That will be a model that can go not just today, but be used into the future. And I believe we will be successful based on the progress we've made already. I truly believe we will get a product that will be done by the end of this year and signed by the governor.
Thanks very much for talking to us on California Politics Today.
My pleasure. Thank you.